following video is brought to you by the Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Please consider liking and subscribing for more Boston sports content.
I got the Boston Celtics going to the final. I got to win the real.
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. Cali, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody ballin' like Boston. Yeah, hey, can't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, right? Life's big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings. It's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that. You don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again. I say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift. Now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86 to the truth in '08. Cement your name with the all-time great. So banner 18 in the Raptors. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Can't nobody do it like Boston.
All right. Welcome into this episode of the Dynasty Proud podcast brought to you by BSEN. I'm Ryan at 19_loading. He is Alex at AlexZachary305. We are coming to you on this Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, after the Cleveland Cavaliers have suffered their first defeat of the season at the hands of your Boston Celtics. So we've got plenty to talk about from that game and the games coming up and much more. Alex, how are you feeling particularly about last night, but just overall as well?
Feels great. You know, we took care of business, and I mean, we'll get into this, but it feels good to see that, like, when they want to turn it on, they can. Like, it's an 82 game season. It's a grind. It's a, you know, like we always want to get back to the playoffs. We're still in kind of the championship, like we just, you know, that just happened type of thing. And, you know, we've seen a little bit of roadblocks, you know, throughout the season against inferior opponents, but like when they're locked in, when they care, like when they really, you know, want it, like they still have it. I think they reach a level that other people can't reach, and that's before Porzingis even comes back, which we'll get to as well. But yeah, I mean, I still feel great about the team. What about you?
Yeah, so I like you said, one of the things I wrote down to talk about is the fact that I do trust them to lock in when it matters, and I do think last night is proof of that. I will go ahead and admit right off the bat, I had a family event last night. I was unable to watch the game myself, which was really, really annoying. I was having a great time. I was not doing something I didn't want to be doing, but I didn't get to watch it live. So that was a little bit frustrating for me. But I have gone back and kind of reviewed everything, caught up on the stats and stuff, and you know, tried to formulate an opinion to the best of my ability based off that. I'm still looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers. I know that they are, 15-1 now, something like that. I realize that their record is really, really good. But I still look at them in a very similar light to how I viewed the Atlanta Hawks from 2014-15. They were the one seed that year. They won like 20 games in a row or whatever it was, and they went into the playoffs and got swept out of the conference finals by LeBron and the Cavs. They had a lot of nice players: Al Horford, Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, DeMar Carroll, Paul Millsap, Dennis Schroeder, 6 guys scoring in double digits, 4 All-Stars, and they have nothing to show for it. And that is how I feel about this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Like, I think they are a collection of really, really nice players. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I think you're looking at a very similar thing where they're built to win a lot of regular season games, but they will lose to superior teams when it comes down to crunch time. And the Celtics, I think, are the complete flip side of that, where they have tons of talent, and when they don't necessarily even have to play their best to win tons of games. And then when they do flip it on, they can beat those teams that aren't anywhere near their level. Can you hear me? Sorry, I think I might have lost you.
Yeah, we had, I think, a connection problem. But yeah, I view the Cavs similarly. Like, this team doesn't scare me. Like, if we're still ranking, I know everyone kind of get on their coattails when they went to 15-0 that, like, oh, you know, this is like they're going to go 82-0 or something, or like this team is just like some revelation. Like, it's the same team. like they've had the benefit of health for most of the season. Yeah, they were missing a couple of guys last night, but like, it's not Donovan Mitchell they were missing. Like Garland had a bad game, but I just look at that team and the way they're put together, and I look at us, and it's just like I just think we're so much better than them. Like Donovan Mitchell in a series may win you a game, maybe two, but I just can't see that team even taking us to a game 7. Like you look at our team, every single guy on our team is an elite shooter and an elite defensive player. Look at their team, like they're one-dimensional players. Like Darius Garland at his best is a really, really good offensive player. He's someone you have to hide on defense. Donovan Mitchell has more size on defense, but he's not a great defensive player. I mean, he's a great offensive player. But then you look down the line, it's like, what are the real 3-and-D guys they have? Maybe like a Max Strus, but like he's at the low end of that, of what you consider a 3-and-D. Like he's a role player, Like I just look at that team and they don't scare me at all. Like if I was going to say, like, I still think the Celtics are in a class of their own in the East, and that's not even factoring in Porzingis. But if you're asking me to rank teams that like I would fear in the playoffs, they're not like number one for me in the East. Like I would put 2 to 3 teams above them in the East of who would like give me trouble. Like it's just something about that Cleveland team. And like, yeah, Donovan Mitchell's a guy that like can take a game over by himself. He can be the best player on the floor, but like over the course of a series, there's a reason he's never won anything. Like it's almost like he's a not as good Luka. Because like he's magnificent offensively, but he doesn't play defense. No, it's not like Luka where he just doesn't care, or he's just not going to try to play defense. It's just he's just not like plus defender. But yeah, that team doesn't really worry me. They're gonna probably just due to how shit the East is right now, they'll probably end up as the top 2 seed. I mean, like I said, they've gained some separation. There's a long season to go. If you win 3 or 4 in a row in the East, you're automatically like a top 4 or 5 seed. Like that's how bad the East is right now. But they should honestly, it should be Boston and Cleveland, but we're only 16 games in, so anything can happen. Donovan Mitchell goes out for a while, like that team could plummet too. So the only thing is, like I said, I don't care at the end of the day what seed the Celtics end up in. They're going to end up as one of the top seeds just because like no matter how much they take their foot off the gas, they're just so much more talented than most of the other teams. But at the end of the day, are they healthy come playoff time? Because if they are, I don't see anybody being able to play with us.
Yeah, and you made a good point, which it made me think of this, and I didn't put this on our rundown for the show, but do you think the East is as bad as it's showing right now? I mean, there are a whole lot of teams with losing records that I don't think should have records as bad as they are. I'm looking at Milwaukee, Philly, teams like that. Like they should. Those are 2 teams that I thought would be right in the thick of contention for the conference, and I still kind of feel like there's a chance that they'll get there. But is it as bad as it looks right now?
So, those 2 teams in particular, they're very interesting because, like, you can be like, okay, well, I have more faith in Giannis than I do in Embiid, and that's completely fair because, like, Embiid's just, for lack of better words, the guy's just a loser. Like, he just doesn't take basketball seriously. Everything's a joke to him. Like, just the regular season's a joke. He got his MVP. I think he's ready to retire at this point. Like, it's all he really ever wanted was to get the MVP. He's not a winning player. But if you look at that team, they haven't really had anybody for the whole season. Like that team's ceiling, yeah, granted they're Philly and you just don't trust Embiid. And like, forget the being locked in part. Like just being able to trust him and Paul George to both be healthy at the same period of time for any duration of time. But they're putting themselves in such a hole right now that like they're going to end up as a play-in team again if they even make it in. So then you're looking at like a Celtics matchup in the first round. But on the other hand, if that team is healthy, and they play anybody but the Celtics in the first round, who's to say that Philly won't beat them? Like, honestly, like, you tell me Philly is going to get their act together and beat Cleveland in round 1, like, in a 2-7 matchup, that's not surprising at all. Like, it really isn't. Like, they have matchups that, like, would just be nightmares for Cleveland. So that's why I just feel like the Celtics are just better than everybody else. But, like, Milwaukee, on the other hand, like, yeah, Giannis is getting his numbers, but that team just – and, they're not as bad as Philly is, at least how they look right now. But that team just looks old. They look slow. Like, yes, they're without Middleton, but, like, they could say to us, like, oh, you're counting on Porzingis, but we can win without him. Like, without Middleton, he's never healthy either. And that team just does not look good right now. So the other teams, Miami, they're hanging around. It's just kind of like the 500 team or play-in level team. That's just what they are for years now. Tyler Hero looks like their best player right now, to be honest. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, like, there's some nights they look like all-stars. There's some nights they look like bums. So, and then it's like Cleveland and Indiana and Orlando are the other 2 teams where they could go either way. Like Orlando right now is, I think they're 8-6, 9-6. They're right there. New York's starting to turn it around. Did I mention them? Yeah. So I think everyone's in the pack. Like, I don't think they're as bad, to answer your question, as their records might indicate right now. But like, I think any of the Celtics losses, they're from lack of focus. Like the Indiana game, they kind of like came out flat. They almost came back to win that game. The Atlanta game, that was just one of those games like the Lakers game last year. They're due for one or two of those a year where they just play like complete dickheads. They show up, the other team, and that's when you worry when the other teams are missing all their players, is that they're going to show up like my name, it says Celtics on the uniform, and I'm just going to jack up 30-foot threes. And like, if they drop, they drop. If they don't, like, we'll just, lock in later and figure it out. So come playoff time, I'm not really concerned about that. This is a championship team. But I think the East will kind of situate itself out to the teams that we thought were going to be up there. Like Detroit's going to drop down. Atlanta's going to drop down. Those teams just don't have the firepower or the horses to be able to hang long term. But I think, like you said, the cream rises to the top. I just can't envision any scenario where the Celtics fall below the top two. Like even take Tatum or Brown off the team for a substantial period of time. The team's just too talented to fall below. But like Cleveland, on the other hand, they built a lead, but I could see them dropping if they had an injury.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. And, not to pat myself on the back too much, but I am 1 for 1 on my Philadelphia takes. I 100% called before the season that without George and Embiid, Maxi's going to get hurt. And that's exactly what happened. And now they're, sitting in a really bad spot, putting themselves in a hole that's going to be hard to climb out of. I think they can because they have enough talent, but it's going to be tough. With Indiana, it seems like Halliburton's taken a step back. Like he's still good, but I remember early in the year he had a game where like he had no points. I think like that shouldn't happen for a guy that's supposed to be your star. And Orlando is now without Paolo, at least for kind of an undisclosed period of time. They don't really know when they're going to get him back. Detroit, I actually like Detroit a little bit. I think Cade Cunningham is a really, really, really good player. I mean, he is putting up triple doubles. He's doing everything for them. I don't think it's going to be enough to carry them to anything significant, but I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak into the playoffs or win a game in the play-in or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see them around there.
You buy Tobias Harris?
No. As a fantasy basketball Tobias Harris reluctant owner who accidentally auto-drafted their team because I was not informed of when the draft was. I'm not loving Tobias Harris right now. Getting back to the Cleveland game, though. So Tatum had a great night shooting the three. He was 6 for 10. Interestingly, though, he was only a +2 in the game. It was, a 3-point game, so I guess that's not as bad as it might sound. But here's where it gets kind of wacky. They played 8 guys last night. Horford was a +18. Derek White and Jaylen Brown both each were +17. Drew was a +3. And then your 3 role players off the bench, Hauser, Pritchard, and Keita, -13, -14, and -15 in a win. That's not great. I don't love that. Do you have what did you see that led to that? Do you have any concerns about Keita competing in a game like this with Allen and Mobley, stuff like that? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I know Cade is not new to the team. He was on the roster last year. He didn't play that much, but there was kind of a honeymoon stage the last, I'd say 2 weeks with Keita where everyone's looking at him like Robert Williams 2.0, and you're just like imagining things that aren't realistic with this guy. I mean, like he looks good at times when he's playing a crap competition, but like he got exposed last night. He looked really bad. And to go to the plus-minus numbers, that lineup was on the floor. Hauser, Keita with Tatum, like they'll leave Tatum out there with some of the reserves, like a full reserve unit mostly. And then they'll interchange different starters with him just because they figure Tatum's just good enough to carry him through it. And so in those times, a lot of times Tatum will get into isolations and he'll get into like step backs. Not that you can't do that with the starters or can't make them, but the shot quality is a little bit poor since you don't have the same level of scoring out on the floor with him. And so the plus-minus numbers can come at that point. And I think a lot of that came when they had built a big lead and then Tatum had it going. And he's just like, okay, well, it's my night. I'm going to keep expanding on that. And it just wasn't happening. I mean, it's the NBA. Every team makes a run. They happen to be in when the team was making a run. Like, it's unrealistic to think that every game they're going to win by 40. Like, when the game's at 20, other teams are going to make a run. Luckily, they held them off. And I actually referenced on one of my posts last night how this game reminded me a lot of the first Bucks game last year in the Garden where the Celtics were in control the whole time. Granted, this one actually got slightly closer for longer. The Bucks last year, that was never really a game. Like, they got it down to 3 like twice in the final minute, but it was never really a game. This one was a game for longer, but it was you just never really felt the Celtics were going to lose that game. Like they felt in control the whole time. And then the opposing fan base, the Cavs, last night and today, and the Bucks last year just came away from the game where it's a moral victory for them because well, we were down by a lot and we came back, we almost won, so that should make the Celtics nervous. It's like the Celtics are so good that like they don't even have to lose a game for the other team to come away feeling good about themselves. Like, oh, we kept it close with the Celtics. That just shows how superior the Celtics are to every other team. But Kata's going to give you some nights. There's going to be a Kata matchup where he's going to look good. There's other nights where you're going to have to go with Luke Cornett, with a Tillman. Like, you're biding time with not, having Horford overexert himself and without having Porzingis. So unless you're going to like deal for another center, which I don't really think they need to do, because getting another guy that's a caliber of the three that they have outside of Horford and Porzingis doesn't move the needle. So it is what it is. You're biding time till they get back and through the regular season grind. But come postseason, like those guys aren't going to really play. You may get a spot, minute here or two for Cato or Fournette, but like if those guys are playing big minutes in the playoffs, it's most likely due to an injury, and that's not good. So it's the regular season. Like I said, they'll have good nights, they'll have bad nights, but I just think if you have a problem with Kata, it's more about your own expectations for him and getting caught up in like the drinking the Kool-Aid about Kata just because he had that like great couple games with that he had.
Yeah, and no Cornette last night either. So it really was just Horford and Kata. So I really think what they're doing right now is just, like you said, sort of holding their water until Porzingis gets back, because they don't really need to go out and get somebody else because they know they have him coming back, assuming he'll be healthy. So they're just doing what they can to kind of, patch it up while he's gone, and then they'll be okay when he gets back. Any other thoughts from the Cleveland game at all?
I mean, not really. I just felt like, just looking at the comments online, it's like people have never seen the Celtics play before. Like when they're hitting their shots, they're like, oh, the Celtics are only ahead because they're hitting all these threes. I'm like, yeah, that's how they play.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're only ahead because they've scored more points than the other team. Like, yeah, no shit.
That's
like
kind of how the game works.
Yeah, this isn't like, this is a team that doesn't shoot threes. It's just going out of their mind. Like you have Luke Cornett out there hitting 10 threes. Like, no, these are the Celtics players that are all elite 3-point shooters, that this is the style of play that they have. Like, and it goes deeper than that, because Cleveland is actually, I think, the third worst team in the NBA as far as allowing 3-point percentages. Like, yeah, some of them were tough shots, but a lot of them were just like really good looks to good shooters that they're just allowing because they just have really bad defensive matchups all over the floor, which is only going to get worse when you have a 7-3 unicorn that can shoot from 30 out there as well. So, I mean, I just don't think this team can hang with us over the course of a series. I don't see us losing more than 2 games, if that, to them, barring something unforeseen between now and the playoffs. But there's not much more else to take away. Like, I don't personally care at all about this in-season cup. I don't think the Celtics really care that much either. I think, honestly, best case scenario for the Celtics is they finish 3-1 in their games and they lose on a point differential so that they don't have to go into that tournament, but they don't have another loss in the tournament, but they also don't risk playing the extra game. Like, to me, that's how I'd like this to go.
I'm with you 100%. I definitely agree with you. Overall on the season so far, we're 15 games in. We have a good sample size to pick from. They are 12-3, second in the East. And like you were kind of talking about before, and we were talking about the state of the East in general, I fully expect the Celtics to overtake the Cavs between now and, I don't know, like Christmas time, something like that. They may not be like a comfortable number 1 seed by then, but I do think they'll be there. I do still just have like some kind of slight concerns about the defense, but as we talked about before, I do trust them to lock in when it matters. Anything standing out to you from the season as a whole, 15 games in?
I mean, I think the first week or so they came out like gangbusters. Like they got their banner, they had like something to prove to everybody, even with the title that like, we're going back to back this year. And I think they kind of got into a lull after that, where they're just kind of going through the motions. Like once the adrenaline of the start of the season wore off and banner night, where it's just kind of like, okay, this is an 82 game season, we have to pace ourselves. Like they didn't have the same intensity defensively, just the way they played. Like, yeah, it wasn't realistic to think they were going to go 82-0, and like they're still probably going to win about 60 games, and they're probably still going to finish first in the East. So it's not like that. It's just they looked like they're letting crap teams hang with them for far too long in all these games. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Because last night, to me, especially the first half, showed that like when they need to, when they want to, they can turn it on. And I know the devil's advocate to that is like, why don't they play like that every time? And it's like, it's human nature. Like, you're not going to get up every single night of an 82 game season. Like, that Atlanta game's not going to be the last game they lose the season where it's like, what the hell? Like, look who's on the floor, look who we're playing. And of course, Twitter will overreact. Like, the Cavs fans, like, well, it doesn't matter because you guys lost to the Hawks without Trae Young, LOL. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, really, it doesn't matter. Like, they lost to the Lakers last year with nobody playing. And it's just like, it's one of those things. Actually, those are more dangerous because then you get guys that like have been looking for their chance to really prove themselves. They see the defending champs on the other side, which is everybody's Super Bowl. Whereas the Celtics are like, oh, this is Atlanta with nobody playing. And it's hard for them to motivate themselves. But it's a long season, it's a grind. We're 12-3. We're building separation between anybody else in the East. We are closing in on Cleveland. I think we'll eventually overtake them, whether it's Christmas, New Year's, whenever. And I think, once we overtake Cleveland after, couple days where it might go back and forth. Like once we really overtake them, they're never going to give up the lead again for the 1 seed. I don't think they're going to win by 14 games this year and then have everything clinched in March. But I think they're going to win the conference by at least 5 games. And then, again, had to go into rest mode again and then just kind of managing minutes with the guys that play deep into the summer. And then, Porzingis, hopefully not going to win. He's not injured by then as well. What about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway and the biggest development so far is the fact that it is now clearer than ever that this is Jason Tatum's basketball team. Like, he is the clear leader every night. I don't think there's any debate about that inside or outside the team. I think that he, there was this thing where it was, there were all these people would say like Jaylen Brown's better than Jason Tatum. Tatum's not even the best player on his own team. Tatum's being carried by a super team, all that stuff. I don't think any of that is arguable anymore. I think it's, like I just said, clearer than ever that Tatum is the number one guy on this team, an MVP contender in the league. He's getting more press and more posts from all your social media outlets. The Bleacher Report thing with the last 2-minute report on that buzzer beater with the saying he traveled. When was the last time anybody's last 2-minute report ever got posted on Bleacher Report? I'd really like to know, because that was ridiculous to me. I could get fired up on that and I could go for hours, but like I thought that was absurd.
For Julius Randle to basically do the exact same thing the next night and have nothing come of it. It's like that shameless Woj tweet after Game 6 the year before, where they're like, it's really concerning that the Celtics seem to receive 8 more calls over the course of a 48-minute game. Like, it's just, what does that happen to anybody else? Like, I don't know where this national discourse for the Celtics, like this hatred came from. I'm like, these are guys that like they play the right way. They're not getting in trouble off the court. Like, it just like they don't play dirty. Like, it's just, I don't understand it. Like, just hate for Tatum, like he's not flashing guns on IG Live. Like, he's not, acting like Draymond Green on the court. Like, it just doesn't make sense, It's just, they have to always find something. And then for a year, it was like, oh, Jaylen Brown can't dribble. He can't go left. Then he wins the finals MVP. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, this is Jaylen's team. Oh, Tatum can't even win finals MVP. LOL. People always have to have something. They're like, oh, God forbid the Celtics go back to back and, Tatum isn't the finals MVP this year. It's like, I don't think he'll care. I'm like, I'm sure, personally, yeah, he'd like to win it, but like, I can promise you his fan base, we don't care. And like, I'm sure he'd rather build his legacy, winning championships. Like, he's not a selfish player. Like, yeah, he has personal ambitions. I'm sure he'd like to win MVP. I'm sure he'd like to win finals MVP. But if you told Tatum right now, hey, you guys are going to go back to back, you guys are going to dominate the way you did this time last year, but the finals MVP is going to be Porzingis, or it's going to be Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown again. Like, I'm sure he'd sign up for that 10 times out of 10. Like, it just is what it is. Like, people want these narratives because, like I said, they were trying to break up Tatum and Brown forever. And then now that that's not going to happen, they just have to try to pit them against each other, even though it just doesn't work. So it gives them something to talk about. The Celtics bring headlines. They bring views. So that's why they do it.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, I feel like every team has every good team has their just trolls in the comments who are just going to say whatever. Like, I don't think those are serious people. And I think maybe we need to stop paying less attention to them. But anyway, upcoming games. So the Celtics have their White House visit to celebrate their championship tomorrow. And then they will be playing the Wizards Friday night. That is an NBA Cup game, which we just talked about. We really don't particularly care about. I would agree. I would tend to prefer that they don't play an extra game. I don't see a reason for them to do that. They also then play the Timberwolves on Sunday, the Clippers on Monday, and then they don't play again until Friday the 25th. And I assume that that's because the league just doesn't want to bother trying to compete with the NFL games for Thanksgiving, just a little bit of a break. And then they play the Bulls, and they've got the Cavs again on Sunday the 1st. And then we get our first matchup with the Heat on the following day. And I know I'm going through a lot of games here, but what stands out to you in the next week and a half?
Well, I guess we'll see how focused they are for the game in Washington. I agree with you, and like I said earlier, like I don't really want them to be in that tournament because it's another loss that's coming if they're in it, or an extra game. So like a guaranteed loss or an extra game. But if they can win the next 2 games, like against they have Washington and Chicago is the other team, by minimal margins, then they could go 3-1 in this group play and still not make it out. That's probably the ideal thing. Like now, as I'm watching them play Washington, I'll probably want them to kick the crap out of them just because that's not a good team. But the game at Cleveland and Miami back to back, that'll be a tough one because Cleveland's going to want their revenge in that one, and then the first game against Miami, who will be motivated, and that fan base, even though the Celtics are on a back to back, God forbid we lose that game, and they have Jimmy Butler playing. You're like, see, they would have lost to the Heat last year if Jimmy Butler is playing because that fan base has to hold on to something. But my big takeaway of the next 2 games is like just the reports about Porzingis. Like as we get closer and closer, when is he coming back? That's what I'm excited about. I really hope they're playing it safe with him and they're not bringing him back any sooner than he needs to come. Like if you told me right now he'll come back February 1st, but he's going to be 100% guaranteed, I'll wait till February. Like as much as I want to see him as better as it makes us, like him being healthy is, I don't want to say guarantee of a back-to-back, but it increases our chances significantly. And so I don't want to bring him back any sooner than he needs to. Hopefully he's on a minute restriction of some sorts when he comes back, but it's exciting to the thought of him coming back.
Yeah, and it's a good segue into the last part of the recent news that we want to talk about. I've been trying to keep up with the beat guys, Brian Robb, Justin Turpin, all kinds of people who are kind of boots on the ground. So Porzingis has been scrimmaging in Maine, and according to the guys on the beat, like I just said, so Justin Turpin, who I just mentioned, I heard him on the radio earlier this week. He said he thinks Kristaps is looking better than he did when he came back after the injury in the playoffs. And I believe that what he said was he was moving better and more fluidly. And he said he saw him in between plays during games, actually going out onto the floor during timeouts to practice free throws. So it seems like he's amped up to get back in there, which is awesome. And then Brian Robb, who I mentioned too from Mass Live, put out a story this morning saying that the return for KP is coming sooner than expected. And so this is a big thing to me because in my experience as a lifelong Celtics fan, how many times have we seen reports about Kemba Walker's knees or Shaq's coming back and you name it, whoever. The Celtics have this history of being kind of unreasonably optimistic about injuries, or at least downplaying the severity of an injury.
When Gordon Hayward's leg was going the wrong direction and they were having things of him coming back that season, there's a history. It's a long running issue. And I don't think that that's lost on a lot of fans, but we've got, in this case, Porzingis is on track to come back sooner than expected. And I don't know why, but the reporting seems different to me this time. Maybe I'm just getting fooled in my, Celtics green footy pajamas. I don't know. But like you said, I see no reason to rush him back. And I have been on record since the offseason. If they wanted to hold him out till after the All-Star break, I'd be fine with it. Like, I really don't need to see him as long as he's going to be 100% when he comes back. Because I think that the Celtics have proven they're capable of winning plenty without him. And, while I do think that's true, I'm also on the flip side of that starting to think they may need him a little bit more than I thought, though. How are you feeling about, I guess, primarily on the defensive end? I mean, do you think these guys are giving up too many points, or do you think it's just the regular season and it's just not that time of year yet? You there? Oh boy. Yeah, having some connection issues here.
Okay.
Hopefully that's not going through to the viewers. But
Yeah, I know. I hope
so
so.
with Porzingis, I mean, yeah, obviously having that presence down low, like a 7'3" guy, it looks like one of those inflatable things at a car dealership, where it's just like if you're a guard trying to go down low, like it's hard to score. But I mean, like he's not like he's a big body, but he's not in the sense of like a Horford. Like he's not going to muscle people around down there. He's more of a shot blocker, but he can play defense on the perimeter as well and block shots on the perimeter. So defensively, he affects a lot, but just offensively, he just unlocks everything. Like you're not going to get trapped. You're not going to get like stalemated on offense when you can just throw him at the top of the key, a 7'3" guy that can see over the defense, that can shoot over anybody. So I just think on both ends of the floor, he just creates another element to this team that makes him like unbeatable. We've proven we can win without him. I still think we could win without him, and it's good to know that we've been able to do it. But like you see from game one of the finals where he came back, hadn't played in 6 weeks, and he just looks by far the most dominant force on the floor. Like it just you can't on both ends of the floor, having not played in a month and a half. Like that was incredible to watch, and that's what he's capable of, and what it brings our ceiling to with this team. So I'd love to see it back, of course. I mean, obviously you want to win these games, you want to build some cohesion and chemistry, but he already has it with these guys, So I don't think it's really necessarily that. It's just you want to get his legs under them, but it's just it feels inevitable, and I hate to say this that like he's gonna get hurt again. You just hope all these injuries they're just little things, and it's not something else that's gonna be like needs surgery, needs to take 2 months off, things like that. So as much as they can baby him, especially since you have Horford, he doesn't play back to back, so we're already limiting his minutes. So that's why you need a Kade, you need a Cornette, you need a Tillman to be able to be serviceable in these minutes, particularly in the regular season, so you don't have to overexert either Out or KP. But yeah, the thought of a playoff run with a healthier, mostly healthy Porzingis is like arousing to think about because it just makes us. I can't see how anybody even takes us to a game six, just like last year, with a healthy Porzingis. Like he just makes us that much better.
Yeah, and kind of like what you said, I think it's even beyond like the skills and talents that Porzingis brings. Like it's his presence on the court and his energy and chemistry with the guys. Like it's just so outstanding that like it seems I don't know. It seems like he is more of a glue guy in the locker room than they've had around in a long time. I don't know. I'm trying to think back to who might even fit that description outside of Tatum and Brown and the guys that are really that have been around for a long time. I guess Marcus Smart, but how'd that work out? Because he ended up getting shipped out to Memphis,
which is crazy because Porzingis is the one that replaced Marcus Smart. Who it should have been like that should have been the hardest person to acclimate to the team, and he fit in like beautifully, and everybody loves him, and he's just at every game, dressed real nice, like he's just always positive, like fan favorite, and he's the guy that replaced Smart, and he's always hurt. And it's like he's just so beloved in Boston and by his teammates. So it's everything's sun and roses with Porzingis. Just wish he was on the floor more often. Is all. That's his only downside.
Yeah, and so there's a thing that I have a developing opinion that it's related somehow to like there's something similar that happens with Eastern European hockey players in Boston. Like for whatever reason, they love Boston and they want to come play for the Bruins. And they just love it there and never want to leave. Like, I'm wondering if there's some of that with Porzingis being kind of from a similar region and living in Boston and just loving it. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but he seems to just love the team, love the players, love everything about the organization. Fans. Yeah. That's gotta be part of it too. Cause when you come from that European environment, there's just that other thing that, that American audiences and crowds don't necessarily have, but European crowds will bring. And I wonder if that has something to do with it too.
Yeah, it's like the knowledge of the fan base, the passion about how into it they are. Like, not to take a shot at Heat fans here, especially since I'm not in Miami anymore, but it's like you go to those games, great place if you're a casual fan. There's a DJ going on, there's a lot to look at. But like the knowledge of the average person in there and the intent to which people are watching or how much they care about is just not there from the average fan during a regular season game. And I'd say a good percentage during the playoffs as well. Whereas in Boston, yeah, you still have a few people like that, but the majority is like they're very knowledgeable, they're very into it. It's like it affects them more. They're like they care about it more. And so I think that is why a lot of people, I guess from that region or from like Europe will buy in, will like love a place like Boston because it's real passion, it's real fan bases where it's like a lot of these other cities, It's just like, oh, we're getting to go to a game. Like, oh, if we win, we win. If we don't, well, it's cool. We got to go to a game. It's a cool, it's a fun experience. Like, having fan bases that care that much, like it matters more to the players. Like you see every time Porzingis, like he hasn't played all year and he comes on the floor, he gets this rousing ovation. Like we just care more here, and it just is what it is. But it's like you can tell he appreciates that and like has a respect for it. And I guess as reference to the hockey players, that I can't speak to as much. I'm not as into hockey. Although one thing I will say, which is kind of funny, which I noticed off topic from the Celtics, but like the Bruins fired their coach and then they were posting like a thank you thing to him on their IG page. I'm like, I couldn't imagine getting fired from a job and then them posting on their social media like, hey, thanks for everything. Good luck. Like, I don't know. To me, that'd be a little annoying, but
it is weird. And hockey's so strange because guys get fired so quickly. The trigger is so quick. The leash is so short. There's so much turnover. Like I don't really think they even wanted to get rid of him. Like, and this is not a Bruins podcast, so we don't have to get into all of that. But I liked Montgomery too, and I'm just kind of miffed at the players in general more than anything else because it doesn't seem like they've really been playing up to their standards. But now I'm lost my train of thought. Oh, so we got sidetracked. But the thing you were saying about Miami and being kind of the casual fan in that environment, that's how I feel about living here in Atlanta too. When I go to State Farm, you have diehard fans in every fan base, and there's a lot of them that'll show up to games. But my feeling growing up in the Northeast and going to Celtics games versus going to games here, the level of knowledge and the level of investment, personal investment and emotional investment in the team and the sport and the game and what's in front of them is so different. Like people go to Atlanta games just to go to a game because it's a night out and that's fun. And people do that. People do that in Boston too, but it's far less that than it is going to see the Celtics, and I think that's true with every team in Boston. And I think there's an element of what we're talking about with Atlanta and Miami that's true around the country too. I just think that fans in the Northeast care a heck of a lot more than they do anywhere else, which is pretty cool. All right. So, I mean, I feel like we've touched on everything. We've been running about almost 40 minutes now. So unless there's anything else, obviously feel free to stop me, jump in, throw in any thoughts you might have. But and I know our schedules have been kind of crazy. So we have not been able to pod as much as we have wanted to. But we will definitely be working to make sure that we can do it a little bit more consistently. I know I'm going to be out of town next week, so might not be able to do next week, but we'll figure out when our next pod will be, and then we will check in. Celtics have the Wizards on Friday. That's the next game coming up. It's at 7 p.m. White House visit. We'll be watching for all that. We'll be posting on Twitter and all that stuff about all that. I'm sure there will be some great photos, memes, whatever that come out of that. There always are. I'm thinking back to that time that Kawhi Leonard posted like a deep fried photo of himself with Obama. Like that was a great moment. Anyway, so I think we've hit on everything we needed to, and we will get out of here. So for Alex and myself, we will catch you next time.
Ends tonight here. It's over. Time to say it again, Boston. Anything's possible. Banner number 18 has been secured. The Celtics are NBA champions.